Morning, everyone. Slim crowd this morning. It's been a busy weekend. I know folks have lots of things going on, but it's still, as always, a pleasure and an honor to be with you in this place. So, the parting of the Red Sea is a passage that brings to my mind a couple of things from my past. The first is I remember vividly watching the movie The Prince of Egypt. Have you seen this? It's a cartoon about Moses, and it's a masterpiece. People who are atheists love this movie. It's that good. The music is good. It's I think it was made by DreamWorks, so it's top-notch animation, and they got together with all different faiths to sort of represent as authentically as they could the story of Moses. And they, given the story of Moses sort of being raised in the house of Pharaoh, they sort of played with this idea that Pharaoh and Moses were brothers. And that was an interesting idea that I hadn't really sort of thought about. So if you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor, watch it. It's so good. I was in Rome when the movie came out, so we went to go see it in Rome, and I just remember it just really moving me very, very deeply. But when it gets to the part of the crossing of the Red Sea, and the walls of water are on either side of the Israelites as they're going through, the walls are they're just massive walls of water, and there's like lightning going on, and when the lightning goes off, it like illuminates the water. It's so beautiful. At one point, when the lightning strikes, the silhouette of a whale lights up, like swimming by them. It's so cool. Gosh, it gives me goosebumps even thinking about it. But do yourself a favor, if you can find a way to watch that, definitely do that. It's so good. The other memory that comes to mind with the passage is it was the passage that was read at my first assignment as a pastor in West Frankfort, Illinois. It was the first, it was the installation mass as pastor that reading happened. And I remember sort of feeling a bit like Moses in front of a massive new assignment like the sea. And not really knowing what I was doing. I had been a priest for 3 years, actually 4, but was only an assistant. So my first assignment as pastor, they gave me 3 churches and a school to run, and wanted me to be the vocation director for the diocese. So I was a bit overwhelmed at this, and I was in my early 30s at this point. And I just remember the image of Moses being in front of this massive obstacle, and God says, "Here's your stick. Good luck. Hit the water with your stick." And Moses thinking, okay. I mean, he's led him through the desert to this point, and this is, he's supposed to be setting us free, and all of a sudden, here we are at literally a dead end. And he asks Moses to hit the water with the stick. And I remember saying at that mass, I said, "I'm going to hit this water with a stick, and I'm going to trust. And let's see what happens." It ended up being a really good assignment. I was there 7 years. So I think about all of that whenever I read this passage. Remember last week, we talked a little bit about the significance of fire and water. And those significances carry over to this week as well. Here we are, literally at a dead end, because remember, water for the Egyptians was a thing of death. But it was also for the Israelites, from the beginning, a symbol of death. There's the flood. There is the fact that the babies were being drowned in the river to sort of control the Israelite population. And now, here we are in front of the sea. But the fire of God's presence, this pillar of flame and smoke, is there with them as well, and it is there in front of them. And Moses is asked to overcome this massive symbol of death, the sea, and he passes through. And interestingly enough, when he goes through, it is the sea that saves them because it kills the Egyptians. Again, a symbol of death. But with them is this continuing fire of God's presence that leads them through the sea. All of that, I think, is very, very powerful. We come to our gospel reading for today as well. And it seems like, to me, they're very sort of disconnected ideas. The idea of forgiving someone to the point where you forget how many times you have forgiven them. And then the story of the Red Sea. They seem kind of disconnected, but I think there's a way to connect it. Just as the sea in the story is a symbol of death, so is holding on to grudges and to anger and not forgiving others. Jesus' act of forgiving us first as the servant in the gospel. We are the servants who have already been forgiven. So for us to not pass that on to others is death. We keep ourselves stuck in time and in the past and in faulty relationships when we refuse to let go of our anger or refuse to let go of things that have upset us, or we refuse to forgive, in particular, someone who has hurt us. It is literally a dead end. Because when we talk about death in Scripture, we are not always talking about physical death, the death of the body. Usually, we are talking about the death of the soul. Our soul cannot grow if we hold on to grudges. It keeps us in a particular place, and it determines the direction of our life. It will always be looking back at the things that are behind us and never moving forward. I think forgiveness is the way forward. It's what parts the sea. It's what allows us to get beyond the death of the soul, to move on, to let go. But we're always concerned about whether or not the person we're trying to forgive will actually receive the justice that they deserve, aren't we? We want to make sure that they get what is coming to them and what is right in the end. Jesus is asking us to not worry about that, but to put that in the hands of God. And that's real hard because we want to see justice. We want things resolved. We want to see that justice is served when someone has hurt us. But we don't always get that luxury. That way of thinking has to change. We have to let go of the waters of death. We have to find a way through them and follow the fire of God's love. Oftentimes at great pains to ourselves. But this is the only way forward. Jesus shows us today that we have already been forgiven, and that what we pass on is simply the gift that we already have, that we often forget about. We know that life can be better when we let things go. We know that that is the way forward, that is the way to life. So the Lord today is asking us and challenging us to put this into practice, to put away the ways of death once again. As we talked about last week, the whole Passover meal was a mark of being redeemed and changing the way that you thought about life. You didn't boil the lamb, you burned it, right? Because boiling involved water, which is the way of death. It was a symbol of new thinking and new ways of moving forward. So today, if you find yourself stuck at a dead end, if there's something in your heart or someone in your heart that needs to be forgiven, this is your sign.